Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's Career Puccino. For those of you who haven't joined us before, a Career Puccino is an extra caffeinated shot in the arm of you as postdocs, early career researchers. You're all welcome, but postdocs, you're my tribe. So you need a cup of tea, but preferably a cup of coffee. Today is black coffee in a hamster mug. And what I will do is then chat through an issue that I think is really important to postdocs. And that comes from having worked with postdocs for a long, long time, or over 20 years. And so today's Career Puccino is going to focus on you working in a team. Now, the majority of postdocs work in teams. Those might be research groups, those might be departments, those might be collaborations, it might be multidisciplinary teams, it might be everyone all being engineers. But the key thing is that we seldom work alone, even if our research is a solo endeavour. We have to then communicate that to a wider audience. We have to be part of our research community, our academic discipline. All these things involve interacting with people and to some extent working together. So even though we might not describe them as teams, we have to get on with a lot of people. And sometimes we can struggle with trying to understand that what it's like from someone else's position, but also I think how we can best work and how we can best contribute using our strengths, using our innate preferences to a team. So I'm going to chat you through today a little bit about Belbin. You might have heard of it. It's a profiling tool, but it's specifically aimed at how you work with a group of people, a team. So rather than be very, very personal, like something like MBTI, this is very much to do with you working with others. And we will show how important that feedback from others can be. And certainly that's the thing that I've really benefited from using Belbin for about 20 years now. It's reliable, it's easy to understand, and it has a lot of advantages. So let's dive in. Let me find my presentation. Okay, so we're going to think about you and your role in a team. I love this Lego model. It's currently sitting on my desk, but took a picture of it. No Lego model survives contact with me. So yes, we've jumbled it up a bit, but we're all different. And thankfully, research is the better for it. The greater the diversity in thinking and approaches, I think the better research is. And so we're all different, but what that can mean is that sometimes we struggle with other people who are very different to ourselves. How can we best work together? Or even just understanding how people would like their information, what sort of environment they would like, where they're going to thrive, and how we can work together as a team. So that's what I'm going to come on to, chatting about Belbin. Now, before we dive into what Belbin is, and I will come on to that, I want to emphasise this is not about putting you in a box. Quite often people go, I don't want to be put in a box. I'm not going to be labelled as this thing. None of the profiling tools I work with, I'm MBTI qualified as well, do that. They provide you with information that you can then wrestle with. You're a bright, sparky person. You want to wrestle with this information. You want to find out, does that reflect me? What can I do with this information? What does that mean to how I work day in, day out? So it's not about putting yourself in a box and just going, right, okay, I am this, so therefore I don't do this and I don't do that. You can absolutely do huge range of tasks. If you've gone through a PhD, you will know that you have to do everything. And some things you will prefer and some things you don't. So team roles and Belbin Team Roles is about preferences rather than putting yourself or limiting yourself to a box. You're all fantastically superhuman postdocs. I don't want to limit you to being in a box. So don't think that this constrains you. I think this liberates you. This gives you a framework to think about your strengths and your preferences and how best to use them. Move my screen on. So we're going to come on to just, I'm just going to explain a little bit about Belbin. It's, I could talk for a good old time on Belbin. It's a really interesting framework, but I'm just going to highlight some key things here. So Belbin was set up by someone called Meredith Belbin, and what he was really interested in was how you can get teams that work really well together, that are made up of bright, sparky people, and equally you can get bright, sparky people in teams that just collapse. So he wanted to find out what made teams tick. And so he got teams to come into, at that point, Henley Management College and observe them every 30 seconds. So he had observers around the room while they did certain tasks. And those 30-second observations were who was doing what, who was saying what, who was thinking, etc., etc. And at that point, he developed 8 team roles. There are now 9 team roles, which are how we naturally act if we're put in that situation of working together with other people. So it's a preference, not that we can't do the other things, but that's what we prefer to do. So our roles here, Belbin have usefully divided them up into sort of the social side. So we lead primarily with a social preference. There's the thinking preference, and there's also the action-orientated people. So you can see this reflected in leadership styles. So, quite often people are referred to as people leaders or task-orientated leaders. And for Belbin, we've also got that cerebral leaders, so leading with ideas or vision. So I'm going to start with the social roles. So starting with coordinator, the pale blue with the baton here. These people in a setting would organise and delegate. So if we were having a big meeting, they'd be going, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this. Belbin allows you some weaknesses, so we don't have to be perfect, which is partly why I love the framework. But a coordinator can sometimes be a little bit manipulative because, we all have our favourites. But a coordinator parcels out work, has a good idea of who's in the team and what would work for a given set of tasks. The green team worker is 2 people holding hands. So it does what it says on the tin. These people will be the, kind of the powerhouse of social stuff in the workplace. So they will remember when people's birthdays are. They will organise the Christmas do, all those sorts of things. They want that harmony within the team. It's really important to them. So sometimes they can be anxious because they don't want to upset anyone. Resource investigators, this is an old-fashioned phone in the purple colour, and these people are always out and about. So they will either be on their mobile phones or, going to chatting to people at conferences. They will be the people that go, they do this in Harvard or they do that in Sydney. Let's go and bring those things back to base. They will be brilliant networkers. So, at an academic conference, you're not going to see them because they're off talking. But they can be a bit weak on follow through because they like the new and they like to meet some more people. Sort of at home desk work doesn't really do it for them. If we move on to the thinking 3 here, we've got plants, which is a light bulb, slightly odd name. It's because you can take someone like this and plant them in a team to provide lots of flourishing ideas. So plants are ideas people, creative, absolutely love coming up with ideas, can lose a bit of touch with reality on occasion, speaking as a plant. It's one of my strongest preferences. We've got monitor evaluators, so the eyeball, pale grey colour. These people will be quite quiet, I imagine, during a meeting, and then pop up at the end and go, we haven't thought about this. And everyone goes, oh, how did we miss that? Monitor evaluators, you're brilliant. But sometimes they can come across a little cynical because they are always asking those questions. What about? What if? But really, really important. As you can see, as we go through the roles, they're all important. There isn't a good or a bad, I want to be this, I want to be that. And you will be a mixture of all of these, and you can do all of these. It's what you have a natural preference for is the interesting bit here. So the other specialist, the other thinking role is specialist, which could be quite a bit of an odd one because you are all super specialists in your field. You wouldn't be a postdoc if you weren't. But where this comes in is a specialist is most comfortable in, say, that team meeting, presenting their specialist knowledge rather than perhaps coming up with vision for the group or checking everyone's okay. They are most comfortable presenting their specialist knowledge. So you are all specialists in your field, absolutely. But the specialist team role is about wanting to bring that specialist knowledge to the table over and above other things. So those are our thinking roles. And then we've got our action roles. So I'll start with the red whip. This is the shaper. A shaper knows exactly where they want to go. They have a clear vision and they want to get there. And sometimes that can mean that other people aren't quite up to speed with them because they just want to go there and they want to get it done. And they've got a vision and that's their drive and that's their purpose. If you have two shapers in a group who aren't aligned in purpose, you could see that there might be some tension there. So shapers are great to have on board, but you don't want everyone to be one. Completer finisher, this is someone tightening up that last bit of detail, doing that last twist on the bolt in this case. These are the people you want proofreading your paper. They will find the errors. They love that attention to detail. They love everything to be correct and accurate. They will probably have some really brilliant ideas and various other things joined together, kind of making sure that they are absolutely focused on getting it perfect. But sometimes you will have to take stuff away because they're done is better than perfect. And so for a paper, for instance, it's like, well, I could just add this. I could just add that. No, it needs to go. And but last but definitely not least are implementers. So two cogs meshing together. These people will have the best lab books in the world. They will have systems. They will have spreadsheets. They will have a way of sorting out their lives. Highly systematic people. Really, really amazing at that. But they might be slow to change because they already have a system that works. It's like, well, why it's not broken, so why are we fixing it? So you could see that there might be a tension there between someone like an implementer and someone like a plant. Plants new, lots of ideas bubbling over. Implementer, I've got a system that works. Let's stick with this. This works. So there are tensions between, as you can imagine, all these roles. Sometimes you might have someone with a preference for plant, but also having that implementer within quite high up within their preferences. Now, that doesn't mean that you're fighting with yourself. It just means that you can probably come up with ideas and then get them to work. So your report will outline how best to use all these strengths. So I've just popped a little picture there as an aid memoir that when you fill in the questionnaire, you will get a report. You are then also asked to choose some observers. I'll come on to those in a minute. But your report will reflect your natural preferences. So it's a really simple process. It takes about 15 minutes, absolute maximum, to go through. And the majority of people that I work with find their report really illuminating. Say, oh, I haven't thought about myself in that way. So for me, I found the insights in the report really, really helpful. But for me, the magic bit of Belbin is the next step. So you do your individual report and you fill that in and you can get a report at that stage. But then you're invited to ask 6 other people who you've worked with in a team. Now, that might be a sports team, a volunteer team, or a work team. It's just people who've seen you in action within a team space. And those don't have to be in your research group. They could be, collaborators, in my case, clients. This is a brilliant bit of data that I think anyone needs to have in their working life of how you come across to others. So your observers are asked to very, very simply look at 2 pages. One page has positive words associated with the team roles, and they're asked to tick or double tick or leave blank those words. And then they've got a sheet of words associated with the weaknesses associated with those team roles. And again, they tick or double tick. It forces them to be more positive than negative. Again, another reason to love Belbin. But for me, this was the light bulb moment when I saw my observers and what they saw in me. So a lot of people in my workplace saw the creative side, and so we were in alignment on that, but they saw other things that I perhaps hadn't seen. So there was some monitor evaluator there, and I tend to think that that's quite low in my own estimation. But what was very interesting was I picked an observer from a different sphere. So when I was a school governor, and they saw me as a monitor evaluator. Because a school governor, you're sitting on the board, there isn't that much room for creativity. You're dealing with children's safety and children's education. And I was quite concerned about this. So I would ask a lot of questions. So my fellow governor had seen me as a monitor evaluator because I asked those questions. So different roles, we step up in different ways, and different people can see our strengths and our preferences in those ways. And I find this amazing. And when I've worked with people within research groups, when they've asked perhaps their principal investigator, their postdoc peers, and then perhaps students, they're going to get that multi-layered feedback on their performance. And it is amazing. If you're brave enough, it can be a great start to a conversation. Firstly, say thank you because someone has given you feedback, and that is a precious gift. But it can really, really illuminate. You think, oh, okay, I work like this, I work like that. Oh, so Joe's seen me in this situation. And yeah, I suppose I do ask a lot of questions, or I do bring new information to the table. Whereas your principal investigator might see you as a specialist because that's what you bring to them in your meetings. It can be fascinating to really unpick those relationships. So the observer's really, really important. It's a bit nerve-wracking, but it's really, really helpful information. And then we've got, sorry, I haven't got the spreadsheet of you at the top. Ignore that for a minute. This bit is a team report. So where everyone in Belbin, everyone in a team has done Belbin, you can map them onto those thinking, social and action roles. And here we can see there isn't a shaper. So there is no one driving this team forward. There isn't a team worker. So there's going to be a lot less cake in this group. Birthdays will be forgotten. And there isn't that monitor evaluator. Now, this doesn't mean that this team's going to collapse, but it does mean that perhaps some of these team members are going to have to step up into those roles because there isn't someone to do it. And this, I think, can be really illuminating for teams. It's like, oh, this is why we, have good systems and we're great at finishing stuff off and we have lots of ideas and we're very outward focused. But when it comes to driving ourselves forward, or evaluating ourselves, we're lacking. So we need to put that in place as a team. So doing everyone in your team doing Belbin can be really helpful to then do that mapping. And importantly, you can understand, okay, this person leads with this preference, this person leads with this preference. What does that mean for us working together? Which is what you've got to do. So it can be really helpful from that point of view. This lovely little team here all getting together and all working together. But I think, doing Belbin as a team can really help. So you can do it at an individual level, or if you all do it, then you can really aggregate your results and understand more about each other. If you're interested in Belbin, do let me know. As I've said, I'm Belbin accredited, and it's a really simple 3-step process to getting your Belbin report and then moving on with that enhanced knowledge of how you work as a team. Have a super week, everybody. If there are no questions, I don't think there are. Have a super week, and I will see you next week.